Join me in making my Cartwheel bracelet. This is also a bracelet that's going to be included in the September kit subscription. So if you get our subscription boxes and you subscribe to the kit edition, this will be one of the projects that you get to do. If you don't get the box or you just need a list of materials, check below in the description for this video and you'll get a list of everything you need. We're going to start by making a series of our little donut shapes with the 2-hole Tila beads. So here's a finished one. You can see I've got it actually double-sided. So I've got 2 of them essentially put together there. And this is how I'm going to start it. I have a thread and needle here, and I've picked up 13 of my 2-hole Tilas with just a little 15-0 in between. So I've done Tila, half Tila, 15, half Tila, 15, and I've done that 13 times. I'm starting with the half Tila, and I'm finishing with a 15-0 seed bead. And I have that close to the end of my thread, but I do have a little bit here at the end, just for me to hold on to. And I also, of course, want to make sure that those don't fall off as I pick them up. So once you've got 13 of the Tilas or Tilas with that, with your seed beads in between, we're going to take our needle and thread and just do a simple little overhand knot here. So we're just taking one thread around the other and pulling it together gently. And I want to make sure that the little knot that I create is sitting between the half Tila and the 15-0. Knots tend to want to kind of jump over beads and not sit exactly where you want them. So you just want to do that slowly and make sure that you get that knot exactly where you want it. And then I'm going to make another knot just to make that a little bit more secure. Take your needle and thread and pass through the hole in the half Tila. And then we're going to go through the hole on top of that Tila, that open hole that's sitting on the outside of our project. And our thread will just sit along the side of the bead between the 2 holes. I'm now going to use my 2mm pearls, and I'm going to add a 2mm pearl in between all of the half Tilas. I'm going to pick up one of my pearls and then just go through the next half Tila through that open hole. And I'm going to continue this the whole way around until I get back to the start here. And I have my little 2mm pearls in between all of my Tilas here. And when you're done, you should have something that looks like this on one side. Remember, this one is doubled, so it's not going to be as thick as this one, but you're going to have one side complete. I've now completed my first side or half of my little half Tila donut. And I'm going to take my needle and thread and I'm going to go through all the beads on the outside here because I want to make this a little bit more secure. And if you go through all these beads, it just helps to pull everything together and make your project a little tighter. You notice it could be a little bit flimsy. So going through the beads again just helps with that and gives you a stronger base to build off of. So I'm just going through all these beads one more time. And you should have something a little bit stiffer, a little bit easier to work with now. We're going to start adding or building onto this the second half of our little donut. So I'm coming out of one of my Tilas or half Tilas, and I'm going to go through the inside hole here. And when I say inside, I just mean the inside of the project versus the outside here. So I'm just making a little U-turn in that bead and going back through the inside hole so that I can start adding half Tilas, start to the Tilas that I have here already. So picking up one of my half Tilas, I'm going to go then back through that hole in my half Tila. So I'm going back through the same hole And as I do that, I'm going to pull the half tila that I just added so it sits directly on top of the half tila that I'm adding it onto. And I'm going to go through my 15-0 and through the next half tila and pick up another half tila and then through the hole in the tila again where my thread is coming out, and then you'll add another tila on top of the one where your thread is coming out. So we're just stacking tilas on top of each other and attaching them through those through their holes there that are going to be facing towards the inside of our project. And here I go again through a 15-0 and through a tila, and pick up another half tila through the hole of the half tila where I'm already coming out to lay another tila on top of the one on my first donut here. So I'm going to continue around adding these half tilas on top of the half tilas that I already have until I get back to the beginning, and then we'll add our 15-0s and continue securing the tilas from there. I've added another 13 half tilas, and I've just added those directly on top of the 13 tilas that I already had on the first side of my donut. So I just added my last half tila. My thread is coming out of one of my tilas, half tilas on the bottom donut here. I'm going to take my needle and thread and just go through the tila on top of that. So I'm now working on the second side where I'm still adding my tilas and 15-0s. And now going between all of these half tilas, I'm going to pick up a 15-0 to connect them all. So just picking up one 15 and going through the hole here in my next half tila and continuing this the whole way around to mimic and repeat the same pattern that I did on the first donut. So these donuts will be identical. I'm just constructing them a little bit differently so that I'm building one of them onto the other one. So I'm going to continue here, just adding one 15-0 now in between all of these half tilas that I just added and I built onto the base here. I've now added all of my 15-0s in between the half tilas. And I also passed through the 15-0s and the half tilas again, just like I did on this side, to make my project a little bit stiffer and to give myself a better grip here to just pull that thread tighter and make sure I really didn't have any slack. I'm coming out of the bottom hole here, or the inside hole of that half tila, and I'm going to go through that outside hole now. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the outside holes of the half tilas together. So I'm coming out of the half tila here on the top, and I'm going to pass through the half tila on the bottom and back through the one on the top. And now here, as I continue onto the next half tila, I can pick up my purl and I can add that purl in between my two half tilas. And now coming out of my next half tila, I'm going to go through the bottom half tila and then back through the top half tila. You can do this technique also on the bottom as you add your tilas here, or the inside. You can do this technique on the inside as you add the half tilas and pick up a 15-0. But I found that I prefer not to do that because it gets a little tight, and I just prefer to not have the 15-0s there as I'm adding them. But you could certainly still use this method if you want to on the inside. So again, I'm just coming out of that half tila, picking up one of my purls, going through the next half tila, through the half tila on the bottom, and then through the half tila on the top. And I'm going to continue until I've got all my purls filled in and all of my half tilas are anchored to the ones directly below. Once you're done adding your pearls and getting the rest of your half tilas anchored to the half tilas below, you're just going to take your thread and match up the thread that you're working with, bring it around to your tail thread here, and we'll tie it off. So I'm just taking my thread here that's attached to my needle and passing through my project through the same holes in the same sort of thread path until my two ends come together. And then I'm just going to do a simple little overhand knot here and pull tight. And then I'm going to do another little knot. And at this point, you can either cut it off with some scissors or thread burn it down. You can, if you don't have a thread burner handy, you can use scissors, get it close, and then thread burn it down later. Sometimes it's nice when you're doing a component like this where you're going to have to kind of know where your knot is, because sometimes it's hard to go back through those beads if you've got a little knot there. So I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail here just so I know where that knot is. So later when I want to attach my pieces together, I know that I can position this in a way so that my knot is not going to get in the way of my connection. So when I go ahead and connect these at a later point, I'm going to position them with the knots facing in a direction where I'm not going to be running my needle and thread back through them. So go ahead and we're going to make a series of these donuts. And these donuts are roughly 1 inch or so wide. So you're going to make about as many as you need to get to the length of the bracelet that you want. I'm going to go ahead and make about 5 or 6 of these and then go ahead and connect them together. Once you have the number of donuts that you need, we're going to connect them with some 8mm pearls. We'll also use our 15-0 seed beads and the 2mm pearls. So you can see here that I already have several connected, and I have one more here at the end to connect, so I'll show you how I do that here. On the one side of the donut here where we're going to connect, we're going to just attach a new thread, and all I'm doing here is just taking my thread, running it through a thread that already exists on my project that's already passing through the beads, and tying a little overhand knot. So I'm just anchoring my thread there. On one side of my donut, I'm going to run through 3 beads, and this is all the way on the outside here. So following the very outside hole of my tilas and my pearls here, my little 2mm pearls, I'm going to pass through 3 beads. So here on this side, I'm going to pass through a pearl, a tila, or half tila, and a pearl. I'm going to pick up 4 of my 15-0s, and then I'm going to pick up my 8mm pearl. Pick up another 4 15-0s, and then you can see here I'm coming out of this pearl, so I'm going to count back to my tila and my pearl, and I'm going to go back through these 3 beads again. So I'm going through my pearl, my tila, and my pearl. So when I do that, I'm going to pull this thread, and that'll pull my 8mm pearl close to the donut. I'm going to go through my 4 15-0s again, and through my pearl. And now I'm going to attach my pearl to the underside of the donut here. So I attached it to the top side of my donut, and I'm going to attach it to the bottom side now. I'm going to pick up another 4 15-0s and go through the same beads, the pearl, the tila, and the pearl, but I'm going to go through the beads that are directly below the beads that I used on the top side of my donut here. So I'm going through that same pearl, tila, and pearl, but I'm using the beads that are on the bottom donut instead of the top donut. And it can be a little tricky, as you can see. It can be a little tricky to get that needle in there because you are working in a very tight space. So just be patient with that. So you can see now I've got 2 rows, or I've got 2 layers here of my 15 seed beads here. So I'm connecting my pearl to both the top and the bottom donut using the same beads, but on each donut. And I'm going to pick up another 4 seed beads and go back through the pearl. And the only thing we really need to be careful of here is that our rows or our lines here of stacked 15-0s, that they don't crisscross. You just want them to lay right next to each other. So now that I've done that, I'm going to repeat these steps, but I'm going to attach the next donut. So on this side here, I went through a pearl, a Tila, and a pearl. So on the other side here, on the other donut, I'm going to pick up my 4 15-0s. And on the other side here on this donut, I'm going to go through a Tila, a pearl, and a Tila. And the reason why I'm switching it up here for the other donut is because I have 13 Tilas and 13 pearls going around here. So it's not an even number, so I'm not going to repeat the same pattern, or I'm not going to pick up the beads, or I'm not going to attach using the same 3 beads on this side because it's odd numbers, so they don't line up exactly. So if I kind of throw that off by 1, and instead of starting with my pearl, I'm going to start with my Tila, and then I line it up correctly. So I'm going to pick up another 4 of my seed beads and go back through the pearl. So you can see here I'm now attached to the top side of my donut. So I'm going to flip this around and do the same and just attach to the bottom side of the donut. Pick up 4 15-0 seed beads. And I'm going to go through the same beads here. So the beads in the same position, just on the other side of the donut. So I'm going through my Tila, pearl, and Tila on the bottom donut. And pull tight to get any slack out of there. Pick up another 4 of my seed beads and back through the pearl. So I'm going to stop here to let you catch up. So we've done 4 seed beads, and we've used those 4 seed beads here to attach our pearl to either side of our donut, the back and the front on each donut. So I'm going to stop here. I'll let you guys catch up, and then we'll continue and embellish this connection a little bit more and make it a little bit more secure. Now I'm ready to start making this connection a little bit more secure and embellishing it a little bit so it just looks a little prettier. So I'm coming out of that 8mm pearl, and I'm going to pass through 2 of my 15-0 seed beads. And we want to make sure that we're passing through the seed beads that are on the top of our project. So if this is the first connection you're making, it doesn't matter because you don't really have a top or bottom yet. But you can see here that since I already have some connected, I want to be on the top side of my project. And the top side is going to be the side that I have the pearls and this extra little bit of framing on my pearl. So we're going to add the pearls and that extra bit of framing now. So you'll see how to do that. And as you add your connections, you just want to make sure that you're coming out on this top side, because the bottom side here is going to look a bit different. And you just want to make sure that you're always adding this embellishment on the same side of the project. So I've come out of my pearl and I've only gone through 2 of my 15-0 seed beads. I'm going to pick up 3 more 15s, and then I'm going to go through on this side here through my half Tila. Now, if you're facing if the side that you're facing here on your donut is a side that has a Tila, pearl Tila connection, then you're going to go through the Tila, or sorry, through the donut, or through the pearl. You're going to go through the center of those 3 beads. So for me here, it's going to be the half Tila. So I'm going to go through this half Tila and only the half Tila. So I'm skipping over the pearl on either side and just going through the hole in the Tila and pulling those 3 15-0s tight. I'm going to pick up another 3 15-0s, skip 2 15-0s, and I'm turning this around a bit, but it's a little bit easier to hold this way. So I've picked up 3 of my 15s, and I'm going to skip over my pearl and 2 15s and go through the next 2 15s. So my thread is coming out right next to the hole of the 8mm pearl. I'm going to pick up one of my little 2mm pearls and pass over that hole in my 8mm pearl and through the next 2 seed beads. So here I'm going to pick up 3 of my 15s. And now here on this side, my connection is using the Tila, pearl, and Tila. So I'm going to skip over the Tila and go through the 2mm pearl and skip over the next Tila and the next 2 seed beads. Pick up 3 15-0s. And I know I'm moving this around here. And I'm going to skip over the Tila, the next 2 15-0s, go through the next 2 15-0s here. So my thread and needle are coming out next to the hole in that 8mm bead. Oh, and I got a little pearl down here. I'm going to pick him up. So I've got one more 2mm pearl, and I'm going to pass over the hole there in the 8mm bead and through the next 2 15-0s. So now I've completed the connection. So you can see we've dressed this up a bit on the top. We've added some more 15s to make this a little bit more secure and cover a little bit more of our 8mm bead. We also filled in that gap between each side of our connection, and we've added that 2mm pearl right on top of the hole on either side of our 8mm pearl. So at this point now, all I have to do is tie off my thread. And if you feel at any place here it's a little too flimsy, you can always go take your needle and thread back through and pull your thread a little bit tighter. But all I have here to do now is tie it off. So I'm just going to pass through some of my beads here until I get to a point where I feel like I can hide my little knot. When you're ready to attach your clasp, we're going to first figure out where exactly we want to add it. I'm going to look at my last connection here and my 8mm pearl, and I'm going to find the bead that's sitting at the center here. And that bead is the one where I attached my 3 15-0s to add that extra layer of bezeling. So you can see here I've got my half Tila with my 3mm, my 3 15-0s running into it. So my center bead on this side of my donut is that Tila. So opposite here, I'm going to find that pearl that sits directly opposite on the other side. And because we had 13 repetitions, we have 13 Tilas and 13 pearls, we're going to go to the opposite side here and find that it's the opposite bead because it's not an even count. So we just want to keep that in mind. So here I have found my bead where I'm going to attach my clasp to get my clasp perfectly centered on the bracelet. I'm going to pass through that bead. It could be the pearl or the Tila. We're going to treat them both the same way. So I'm going to pass through that bead. And for me here, it's going to be my pearl. And I'm going to start with a new piece of thread. If you have a piece of thread left from your last attachment and you just want to bring your needle and thread over to this bead here, perfectly fine. I'm just starting with a new thread. And because I'm starting with a new thread, I'm going to just leave a little tail here so I can come back and connect it. I'm going to pick up 3 15-0s. And if you want to add a little length to the bracelet, you can pick up a couple more seed beads. You can also add a length by adding another pearl at the end here if you want on either side, instead of adding a whole nother donut. So you have some options there as far as adding length. You can add donuts, or you can just add the pearls. So here I am coming out of my center bead, which is my pearl, and I've picked up 3 15-0 seed beads. The clasp, adding the clasp on both sides will be exactly the same. So I'm just going to show you one side, but it's both going to be exactly the same. I have here my infinite clasp. And so you can see here on one side of my clasp, I have this little jump ring. And when I put the clasp, the push clasp, or the tongue, this is actually called a tongue. When I put the tongue back in my clasp, so it's all one piece, I have a little jump ring on the other side. So I'm going to use that jump ring on both sides to attach. So you're just going to go through one side and just make sure that your clasp is facing up. So you've got all of your the top of all of your components facing upward. And I'm going to go back through these 3 15-0 seed beads and just being careful that I'm not pulling that tail thread out of that pearl. You can also anchor it like we did before. I'm just choosing not to this time just to show you how to do it without that, but you can definitely take your thread and tie it on the thread that's already running through, and then you won't have to worry about that thread coming out. So all I've done here is picked up 3 of my 15-0s, run through the little jump ring there attached to my clasp, and then back through my 3 15-0 seed beads. I went through my 2mm pearl, and I'm going to pick up another 3 15-0s. I'm going to go through my jump ring again, that tiny little jump ring on my clasp, and back through my 15-0 seed beads. So I'm just attaching my clasp with a little loop of thread here running around that jump ring. And I'm going to go back through the pearl. You may want to use a size 11 or 12 needle at this point. I've been using 10, but 11 or 12 may be really nice because going back through pearls and 15-0s, you may need something a little bit thinner so you don't break any of your beads. So at this point, my connection is done. I'm choosing to do a really simple connection because I don't need it to be big and bulky. I don't need it to stand out. I don't really want to add a lot of length. You can also shorten this. You can try doing this with just 1 or 2 15-0s. I'm just doing 3 here, but really any number will work as long as it's the right length here and you get a good connection. So I'm just going back through the beads and back through my 15-0s and back through my pearl just to reinforce this connection here. And make sure you don't get anything tangled. That can be really easy to do if you get anything tangled. You want to make sure that you're catching that and detangling as you go. If you see something kind of caught, just pull that little thread out and just get it back where it needs to be. And up the other side here. Again, I'm not adding any beads. All I'm doing is just reinforcing the connection. You can also use a wire guard, but I'm choosing to use the seed beads so you can kind of see how to do this. The 3 seed beads adds just about the same length as a wire guard. So if you're used to using wire guards, that will be the same length for you. And now I'm just going to take my 2 ends of my thread, do a little overhand knot here, and I can take my needle and thread back through some of my beads here to hide that little knot that I did. And I got my little connection here, flopping around on me. And once I have that complete, I can go ahead and burn down my thread. So like I said, on the other side of the project, I'm going to do the exact same thing and just connect the other side of my clasp here. You just want to make sure that as you connect it, you're not twisting your project. You want to make sure that it's facing the same way and you're not accidentally twisting and connecting and then getting it twisted in the center there. So now the very, very last thing that I need to do is add my cabochon to my clasp. This is one of those infinite cabochon clasps, or infinite clasps with a cabochon here. I'm using the gunmetal color because I thought that looked nice with my black and white theme. And I have a little hematite cabochon here that I'm going to put right in there. You can use a number of different glues to attach, but all you really have to do is use a good jewelry glue. You could use E6000 like I have here. You could also use a Loctite or any kind of jewelry glue that is going to work on metal and glass. You can also scuff this up a little bit beforehand. You could use your needle if you want just to scuff up the back of the cabochon and inside the clasp there. And then I'll just help it adhere a little bit better. Put just a little bit of glue on your cabochon and put your cabochon right in the center of your clasp. Give that a few minutes to dry. Depends on what kind of glue you're using, how long you need to let it dry, but the glue will also give you a suggested time. With something like Loctite, give it a couple minutes and it will be dry to the touch. With E6000, give it a few more minutes. And I would leave it possibly overnight before you start wearing it, just to make sure the glue has a good chance to adhere and your cabochon will stay put.